Thanks very much, Jessica. Thanks for having me. Thanks all of you for coming tonight. A few words about tonight's reading. I promised to keep it clean because there are young people in the audience. If you are 11 and under, you're going to find this reading hysterical. If you're over 11, it's going to haunt your dreams forever. I've given you all a few things tonight. First of these is a Thunderclap Casino poker chip, good for $100 at my Make Believe Casino. Please enjoy with my compliments. Actually, turn around, there's a website, thunderclapcasino.com. That is my real live casino online, and you can go and enter a contest and win, for a chance to win 2 nights at an Indian casino of your choice. This is real. It's a legit thing. My publisher is going to do it. It may arrive as like a couple of 20s stuffed in an envelope. But we are giving away 2 nights at an Indian casino, and it's free to enter. All you got to do is fill out the contact form, and that's it. We're not going to spam you or do anything like that. So please, I hope you take advantage of that. That is legit. You also should have received a, what is this? Thank you, a raffle ticket. And what I'm going to do is give away, Andy, can you come here for a second, please? Would you hold this up? Show the lovely people where they can win. A Forest of Fortune t-shirt designed by Kiyoshi Nakazawa, a good friend of Razorcake, good friend of mine. I did a fundraiser in San Diego for San Diego Writers Inc., where everyone who donated some money for this literary nonprofit got a t-shirt. We had a few left over, so I'm going to give them away, some of them, tonight. So be excited. You can walk away with a Forest of Fortune t-shirt. Thank you. This is my show. Please sit down. Forest of Fortune, what is that? That is a book that I wrote. In 2000, I moved out to LA in 1996, so I lived here for about 10 years, and I moved to San Diego to get married. I know I wasn't so sure at first, but it was a great thing. It is a great thing. I went to work at an Indian casino, which was not such a good thing. It turns out that I didn't really like my job very much, and especially since we went into a recession, it was a lot of firing, a lot of layoffs, constant turnover, new bosses, just a lot of stress and a lot of unhappy people gambling money in a casino that they really couldn't afford to lose, and people working there who felt like they couldn't afford to leave, felt trapped. And that was certainly my mindset when I wrote my novel about a completely make-believe Indian casino. One of the main characters is a Caucasian copywriter with a little bit of a drinking problem. So I'm going to read a section tonight from his point of view, and it kind of speaks to the absolute culture shock of going to work at an Indian casino on Indian reservation. Even though it wasn't that far from where I lived, it was just 30 miles away. It was a whole other world. I mean, yes, it's a sovereign nation, but it was a completely different experience. And also, San Diego's a little bit like LA in that we have beaches and we have deserts. We also have mountains and estuaries, so you can be in the sun in the afternoon and be freezing cold and absolutely miserable later on that evening. So the winters were a little bit intense for Southern California. We'll start there. Pemberton waved his thunder badge across the sensor and listened for the telltale click before pulling on the warm, germy door handle. He'd been on the job for 2 months, and although winter had sledgehammered Falls City, the illness that Donna from Human Resources had warned them about failed to materialize. Aside from the occasional hangover, Pemberton remained reasonably healthy. The same could not be said for his coworkers. It was so bad, the marketing department had become something of an infirmary. A place where sick people gathered to comfort one another in their illness and make each other sicker. Amy, the leader of the events and promotions team, had the sniffles, which she blamed on her chronic allergies. She lived in the trailer park not far from Pemberton's cabin. Amy didn't smoke, but she took frequent trips to the parking lot. And when she came back, she looked like she was about to cry, yet remained strangely energetic. Pemberton had suspicions about her allergies. Onan was the sickest of the bunch. He called it the crud. And instead of blowing his nose, he loudly sucked the mucus back into his sinuses during meetings. This grossed everyone out, but Onan didn't seem to care. 40 years in the trenches of Las Vegas casino marketing had left him a crusty, irascible creep. But beneath the saurian exterior was an exhausted wretch propped up with pharmaceuticals. Onan carried his singular brand of jerk-waddishness with astonishing vigor, but the side effects were killing him. He complained he rarely slept, seldom moved his bowels, his hair follicles stimulator made him pass gas. And he was always excusing himself from meetings to break wind in the hallway, which earned him the moniker Little Chief Thunderclap. But it was Barbara who terrified the staff with her violent barking spasms that seismically shifted the phlegm in her chest up to her throat and back down again, so she sounded like a seal gagging on a piece of blubber. The tiny Filipino administrative assistant had been like this since Pemberton started, and her illness worsened through the unusually wet winter. But she refused to take a sick day. One by one, they all manufactured excuses for moving their desks to the other side of the cubicle warren, to workstations they imagined were beyond the reach of her honking fits, and donned headphones to be spared that awful, gelatinous quack that sounded like an oyster sliding through a trombone. Even though the weather had turned, Pemberton feared he wasn't out of the woods. It was only a matter of time before it caught up with him. He imagined his co-workers' illnesses mingling and merging, metastasizing into a kind of super sickness, expressed as invisible vapor, like a creeping green finger in an old cartoon. If it touched you, you were done for. Sometimes Pemberton imagined a hamster trail, a network of microbes traveling like worker germs on a subway, Barbara's pneumatic hacking propelling them along to their final destination. Next stop, Pemberton's immune system. Listening to the chorus of coughing, sniffling, and sneezing, Pemberton had to fight the urge to flee the office and walk the floor for a while, smile at the guests, listen to the music of chants. But at the marketing department was a contaminated subway car. The casino was Grand Germ Station. And it really was an awful place to work during cold and flu system. And even though I worked in the marketing department above the casino, it was all the same air that was being recycled. So you really couldn't get away with it. And if you do like to play the games, bring some sanitizer, because people do some absolutely disgusting things to those screens. And they're all touch screens now. They're all, the little plastic buttons and the plastic screens. So play at your own risk, especially during the wet months. So what happens here is that Pemberton gets called upon to attend basically a taping of a news segment. They've opened up a new park at the casino, and the news have kind of shanghaied the chairman of the casino to come speak and tell them about it. And Pemberton is there to supervise, Doesn't know why, that's not what he does, but things start to go wrong. Creator, we humbly ask you to bless this land, this sky, this wind, and this water. Guide us, wise one, so we may continue your noble work and praise you through our actions all our days. Chairman Cloud Shadow stepped away from the microphone and bowed his head. The chairman was a massive man, a giant of an Indian who carried the weight well. He was always impeccably dressed, but never wore a tie, favoring silk mock turtlenecks like a gangster in a made-for-television movie. From what Pemberton had seen, the chairman was always serious, but seldom somber. There was a small gathering, just a handful of tribal council members, a smattering of shoppers, and Pemberton. But the producer from the television station had them bunched tightly together to create the illusion of an assembly. The cameraman made last-minute adjustments with his equipment, but otherwise remained perfectly still. Behind him, the reporter rifled through her oversized purse. A fountain gurgled, birdsong filled the trees. Pemberton could feel a headache coming on. The chairman shook hands with members of the tribal council, the inner circle of the Ukiah government that presided over all aspects of the tribe's enterprises, and popped a cough drop into his mouth. The reporter was an attractive woman in her 40s named Jill Gadeen. Pemberton was hoping Channel 6 would send somebody else. Jill Gadeen looked a lot older in person than she did on television. She clearly had a ton of work done, which struck Pemberton as sad. She was tall and gaunt with expensive white blonde hair and a tiny waist. Her big green eyes lit up when she greeted Chairman Cloud Shadow. If I could have a few minutes of your time, I'd like to take a walk through the Peace Park with you and ask a few questions. Of course, Miss Dean, the chairman replied. I'd be happy to walk with you. But his body language said otherwise. Please, call me Jill. Jill conferred with the cameraman and they worked out a plan to tour a scenic stretch of the park. Pemberton lagged behind to make sure he stayed out of the shot. I'm here with Chairman Cloud Shadow to celebrate the first anniversary of the opening of the Ukiah Peace Park at Thunderclap Casino. What can you tell us about this amazing place, Chairman? We built the park to honor the land our ancestors grown for centuries. The rest was tribal boilerplate, maintaining the land, preserving the tribe, giving back to the community. No mention was made of the fact that the Ukiah Peace Park was nothing more than a glorified jogging trail that encircled an outlet center with over 100 retailers. They did this several times, walking down the same stretch of path, repeating the same words. With each shake, the chairman increased the Ukiah's claim on the land from centuries to millennia to all time. He closed with some claptrap about harmony with the land as a means of bringing peace in the universe, prompting Jill to close with, and that, my friends, is what it's all about. Pemberton, being a stickler for such things, wondered exactly what it was supposed to mean. He didn't grasp how selling sneakers made in overseas sweatshops and hamburgers from cows raised on clear-cut rainforests, etc., constituted harmony with the land. When they were finished, Jill consulted with her cameraman, who whispered the bad news. They were going to need another take. Pemberton could sense the chairman's growing annoyance. He seemed immune to the TV reporter's charms. Apparently, high-strung white chicks weren't his type. What seems to be the problem? Pemberton asked. Well, Jill said with a nervous laugh, it's the park. I'm having trouble hearing the chairman over all the birds. She looked everywhere but at Pemberton. Birds? As soon as Pemberton said this, he could hear them squawking in the trees. I can take care of that, the chairman said. You can? Yes, no problem. Old Indian trick. That's incredible. Yes, the chairman agreed. Our sound system covers the entire park. Now, if you'll excuse me. Of course, Jill said, and while the chairman whipped out his phone and gave the order to shut off the Birdsong soundtrack like a forward observer calling in an airstrike. Jill fussed with her bag to conceal her embarrassment. She sought and found reassurance in a compact mirror. The chairman put his phone away. I'm afraid I have time for one more take. Jill linked arms with the chairman. The chairman cloud shadow, silencer of birds. One more, the chairman wanted. They went back to their marks. And one, the cameraman said, before Jill the Dean began, Pemberton felt a feathery tickle in the back of his throat. He attempted to stifle it, but the harder he tried to suppress the cough, the more it wanted to come out. And when he finally opened his mouth to suck in more air, a greenish yellow charge splashed onto the sidewalk. Everyone looked, and then looked away. The super sickness, it had finally caught up with Pemberton. Thank you. So Pemberton is just one of 3 characters in the novel. That's all I'm going to read tonight. I'm just going to tell a little bit more, and then I'll answer some questions that you might have, or just accept your compliments. But Pemberton is one of 3 characters. The other 2 are Lupita, who is a gambling addict. She loves the slots. And also Alice, who is a Native American, but she's not a Yucamaya Indian. She's not from the tribe. She's from a different tribe, so she's an outsider too. So the 3 of them are all outsiders, and they're all trapped in the casino in their own way. And their storylines intersect, and it's amazing. Let's see, we're going to give away some t-shirts, but how about I'll answer any questions that you might have about the book, about how it's completely made up and not based on my experiences at all. And then we'll give away some t-shirts, and we have lots of wine and water and cookies, even some that taste like a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. So Annie, what have you always wanted to know about this book? If I don't get questions, there's no raffle. Scott, oh, Jesus, Scott.
What was the most difficult part of writing for you?
Maybe when I asked you for a blurb, you said, I think this could use a little more tightening, Jim. No, the most difficult part was, it was really, this book was with me for a long part of my life, and as many of you know, I am in recovery from alcoholism. I wrote this book in 2008, right before I quit drinking, so as you can imagine, it was a little sketchy. And then I went into recovery, and I got my act together, and I was able to start focusing on the book to give it the attention that it needed. And I worked pretty hard on it for about a year. But the hardest part was that I made all these enormous personal changes, and much to Nubia's relief. And but Pemberton, he's still stuck in the casino. So I had to kind of live with Pemberton and he was kind of like my ghost in a sense. So working with Pemberton was kind of like looking back in the past and kind of wanting something better for him, but not quite able to spring the trap that he had set for himself. So in many ways, the book is an autobiographical ghost story. Ghosts, Annie asked? Yes, there is a supernatural element to Forest of Fortune, but I'm not going to say anything about it.
Between drafts, what was the element you changed the most tonally to make it more cohesive?
Well, the biggest thing was there was a trend in novels that was really starting to annoy me, where there was these all these books about orphans, They had no parents. They had no connections to the world. They were just these little precocious people that wandered around with their precocious thoughts. And I was all like this kid would be traumatized if this is what really had been. So, and there were all kinds of books like this. So I wanted a book that was just full of messy characters. You know, people who had been through bad breakups and were having bad relationships, you know, at work, people who were haunted with their past, people who were actively arguing with their family, people who were calling them on their bad behavior and not being able to see it. I mean, the stuff and the drama of real life. So I packed a lot of that in there. You know, Lupita had like a pretty big family situation, and everybody had like a large mess. And I realized that I really needed to condense it down. Otherwise, it would be hard to keep track of everything. And so that was one of the big tonal shifts. Just kind of paring it away, killing off characters, combining others. So even though parts are autobiographical, there are people in my life who would look at it and be like, what? Korean? Why? You don't know anybody like this. Or, this is not how I am. Mark.
Any stories from life at the casino that couldn't make it in the book for one reason or another?
Oh yeah. Well, a couple things. The story I told you about the birds, that was a little bit of casino lore that had been passed around that nobody I worked with had actually witnessed it, but everybody swore it was true. That there was, you know, so I kind of made it true in a sense. But there's all kinds of different things, what I did, the things that didn't make it into the book, pretty much what I wanted stayed in. There's a historical framing device that kind of talks about the land where the casino used to be on this Indian reservation in early Americas in the 19th century. And I don't want to say too much about it because it kind of antagonizes your expectations of what you might find, on ancient tribal land, quote unquote. And that's where some of the new supernatural and historical elements come in. And it's a little out there. And I was really afraid that my agent or an editor at some point, someone would be like, okay, we love the story, but get rid of this historical prologue and stuff. And no one did. So I was really glad because I think I would have fought for it because it kind of is the thing that makes, for me, the book rewarding for the people who stick with it all the way to the last page.
Have any of them read it? Do you know? Your old colleagues or your old casino brethren?
Yes, so one of the things is I worked with some graphic designers, and it's kind of astonishing. If you know graphic designers, you know that they don't read. I don't think they even really know how. Like reading is like the last thing they get caught doing. Unless you tell them, hey, I wrote something about you, then I guess that's how you do it. But there were these two guys I worked with who became dear friends of mine, and they were pranking me relentlessly, me and this other guy. And it was like, so some of those pranks I brought into the book, and some I had to cut because it was just got a little bit, it was turning into a little of a hijinksy kind of a thing. But it was weird, like I never really found out which one was doing it. They were really good. And but we got back at them. They were in a separate office, and there's this device called an Annoyatron. Does anyone know the Annoyatron? Oh, this is fantastic. So you can order it online, and it's the size of a cell phone battery, and it has an adhesive back, so you can stick it anywhere, flip it on, and it will emit this high-frequency burst of noise for just like a fraction of a second, but at random intervals every 8 minutes. Anywhere from 4 to 8 minutes. So it's something that you hear and you don't hear, and so it drives people. They should call it the Insanatron because we had hid it, stuck it in the back of a metal desk drawer. But the people were ready to have the walls dismantled. They were convinced that like a construction worker had dropped a watch or something, like back there. So that's when we were like, okay, we got this part. So, and the best thing is Nubia laughed. It's like, my hearing sucks. I couldn't hear a thing. Even when they were adjusting it, I'd be like, what? To wrap it up, Force of Fortune, there's, I've talked a lot about like these people being trapped, these people having horrible problems, and maybe there being an awful ghost responsible. But it's also a really fun book, if I do say so myself. There's some humor, and I hope you find it an entertaining read, and I hope you enjoy it. Thanks so much for coming. Let's give away some t-shirts, and then you have to help me eat these cookies.
Yeah.